So I want to get back here to speak about the development of sport from a governance and public finances perspectives. And first thing to start talking about is how the international calendar of sports and even the domestic one of several countries have been impacted by what's going on in the world. First of all, with the COVID 19 pandemic, as we have witnessed, several events were simply cancelled, others skipped an edition. For example, the Youth Olympic Games that didn't take place in 2022 and are supposed to take place in Dakar in 2026 after the last edition 8 years ago from that point in Buenos Aires in 2018. That's just an example of the postponed. Some will never get hosted, and the other thing is that there were some events that are supposed to be rescheduled. We have seen a lot of things rescheduled. Within these last four cycles, but there are still many other events to put on the list that are catching up due to the backlog that was created by the COVID 19 pandemic, such as the AFCON that is supposed to take care in Cote d'Ivoire in 2023, but it will be hosted in 2024. The AFC Asian Cup as well will be hosted in Qatar, and it's the 2023 edition, but will be hosted in the beginning of 2024. We can notice that also on domestic soccer competitions, such as the domestic cups in Morocco and Egypt, an example. In track and field also, we can give the example of the World Athletics Indoor Championship that was supposed to take place in Nanjing and have been postponed so many times due to the COVID impact at the level of the People's Republic of China. The Chinese want still to host the event in the future. So we might still see some events despite the fact that the international and domestic calendars are starting back to look forward into the future after the heights of the pandemic. We're still looking at some events that were basically postponed by the pandemic that will take place in the future, as I have been given some. Regarding other matters that shake the international calendar of sports is the current geopolitical situation, and comes from the Russian-Ukrainian conflict to other conflicts throughout the world. I will get back onto that. So I'm talking also from a fan of sports. I will be looking forward also to watching the final of the Rugby World Cup, an exciting event between the Springboks and the All Blacks this weekend. Getting back here to the great event, the Olympic Games that usually celebrate humanity, and the fact that the Olympic movements have been tested during the Games of Tokyo, that were basically the ones that were challenging the COVID-19 pandemic. And now here in Paris in 2024, the most important thing for this game is to stand up for celebrating humanity amid a very big tension in the geopolitical context. No one needs to get back on what happened. In example, in Munich in 1972, at the time before the context of the games, the tension was big in 1971 between Israel and the Palestinian territories that have been escalating to several tensions between both countries. And among the things that we have seen, unfortunately, were the events that happened in Munich during the Olympics. So catching up here again for another challenge after Tokyo 2020, the sports march versus COVID-19. Now again in Paris 2024, the sports march versus other things that are ongoing in the world. But like I said, this is the main events of sports for humanity that have started in 776 BC, have been interrupted during the Middle Ages, and got back to be organized on the modern editions since 1896 with few interruptions. The endeavors of the IOC is to gather all the nations of the world, but we have to understand the geopolitical context and the fact that the Russian Olympic Committee is speaking about hosting amid the Second Cold War games that will have domestic regions and republics of Russia competing against each other, plus some invitees countries that will be there as well, such as the Belarus, the DPRK, other former Soviet republics, Syria, Nicaragua, Venezuela. This is just a scratch up topic, like when we spoke about the Olympics of 1980 with the boycott of the West, and the one of 1984 with the boycott of the Eastern Bloc. And right after that, we have seen the Goodwill Games that were organized as a backup for the countries that did not take participation in these respective editions of the Olympic Games. Right now, we're still speaking about it. We will see what's gonna have as an impact. I know that sports can play just that much, but we will still see it as a good message in this context of action. It's too early to call for Los Angeles 2028 and Brisbane 2032 because we don't know how the world is going to evolve from this point on. If I have to say something else about the Summer Olympics, I would like also to see candidacies now of many countries that never hosted the Olympics. It's true that the Global South have seen the Olympics being hosted by Mexico in 1968, by Brazil in 2016. Most of the time it stayed in the geopolitical north, and it's very important also by 2036 to have a move in this direction. Why not Africa? Why not the Arab region? So too early to call for the hosting of 2036 right now. I will move to the Winter Olympics to see that after Milano, Cortina d'Ampezzo, the event of 2026, we will also witness the host selection for the 2030 editions. The IOC is trying along with the IPC for the Paralympic Games to seal up the calendar of these major events throughout the 2020s in order to focus on the 2030s plus, and that's what's going on with what we see with the Summer Olympics, and the winter will follow up. Very important to review with the IOC from a governance perspective the number of disciplines that could expand within both Summer and Winter Olympic Games, and now we're following up with what's going to be an assessment in Paris a few months from now. Of course, the qualifications are ongoing right now for all the disciplines that are involved at the Paris 2024 Games. Paris will host the Games for the third time after 1900 and 1924. Two other cities are expected to host, Los Angeles will after 1932 and 1984 by 2028. London did it before in 1908, 1948 and 2012. China and Beijing. Beijing specifically remains the only city to host the Olympic Games of winter and summer both, respectively for the 2022 and 2008 for the Summer Olympics. From the perspective of the other multi-sport events, they play also another important role, from the world stage to the intercontinental stage to the past linguistic stage like the Commonwealth Game, les Jeux de la Francophonie, the Lusophonie Game, the Pan-Arab Games, etc. So it's very important to focus. The hard thing on this is to have so many disciplines organized in a few days within these events, but they remain emulating the Olympic Games, which is the major multi-sports event. So we're gonna be following up with several agendas of sports and development. I spoke about track and field earlier, and it is of course an agenda that is heavy either on the outdoor, the indoor, cross country, road running, mountain running as well, and exotic running too when we speak about the ultra marathons such as Le Marathon des Sables that takes place in Morocco. Technically there are other ultra marathons that could also involve mountain running, as well as events that will make them look like the triathlon or the modern pentathlon, if I may. From the perspective of other Olympic sports, also following up with, like I said, the other big events, either in the summer or the Winter Games, as well as the non-Olympic sports. As we know, we have that. I spoke about rugby earlier, but there is another oval ball that competes with the final of this weekend through the NFL in the United States. Baseball, that is no longer an Olympic sport, is also there here in the United States. And the third factor in the United States is ice hockey. As you know, the NHL always goes after the IOC to keep the professional players while the Olympic ice hockey tournament is taking place. We can talk about that in soccer later, but it's less pressure for the MLS or its player to leave the MLS to go play the Olympic football tournaments. But for the ice hockey, it's a certainty that the NHL don't want to release the players to play in Milano and Cortina d'Ampezzo, in example, in 2026. So get into soccer because it's the most popular sport in the world, and in terms of governance, there are a lot of things to say that I have been also thinking about from the perspective of the executive decisions of the steering committee that have shares in the international sports bodies of soccer. It's very good to see congresses, councils, executive football summits and symposiums. Each of the meetings has its characteristic, and I say the FIFA is the second most powerful sports body after the IOC. The FIFA World Cup should play, like the Olympic Games, its role in bringing ease on the geopolitical scene in the world. The Arab world could play a very important role here by Qatar organizing the 2022 World Cup, as we saw, and now Morocco in 2030. There is a bit of Saudi Arabia in 2034. I will get back to that into a second by getting back also to celebrate the centenary of the event in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. It's very good to have this characteristic of multiple confederation hosting. First, an Euro-African mega tournament with 101 games and 3 other games that will be played at the level of the CONMEBOL region. Uruguay celebrates the centenary after 1930. Argentina almost the 50 years because they organized the World Cup in 1978, which was 48 years after the opening of the event. And Paraguay also because the CONMEBOL's headquarters are in Luque in Paraguay. 2034 is too early to call. There are, of course, the candidacy of Saudi Arabia, but we can also speak about the People's Republic of China and the joint bid of Australia and New Zealand 11 years after hosting the FIFA Women's World Cup. This remains the main soccer event for the national teams men. We have to remind also that the FIFA Women's World Cup is a huge event. Now the bids are ongoing for 2027 with a joint bid of the United States and Mexico, another one of Brazil, and another one of South Africa for this newly expanded tournament of 32 teams. We have to speak about the finance, and since I evoked it earlier, the whole point of this video is to highlight these important things because the FIFA Women's World Cup has created in some editions a big deficit for FIFA compared to the benefits of the Men's World Cup. But now the work within the next event with 64 games, the first one with 64 games in Australia and New Zealand, is to popularize women's soccer to make this competition as equal to the Men's World Cup, even if it started 61 years after that. So we are following up with that. Other thing is that women have another national team senior event, which is the Olympic football tournament that invigorates women's at the level of soccer with 12 teams. The men's tournament that used to be a senior tournament in the past, but with the emancipation of the FIFA World Cup became one of the amateurs. That's why Pelé and Maradona, in example, never played on it. Became after that a tournament for under 23 plus 3 senior players, and it makes it look like the World Cup in so many figures of cases, like when you had Messi playing in 2008, maybe in 2024, if Argentina qualifies to the event, another gold medal. Few players have won the World Cup and the Olympics in soccer. I will mention some of Uruguay in the 1920s plus the 1930 World Cups, and some of Italy in 1934-1938 World Cup plus 1936 Olympics. But I think there was only few players that were involved with the national team and the Olympic team. From the club perspectives, the Club World Cup ancestors were the Intercontinental Cup that was basically hosted by UEFA and CONMEBOL. After that came the ancient format of the FIFA Club World Cup that will disappear in Saudi Arabia after the 2023 edition, consisting on 6 to 8 teams. And like I said, it has been criticized, the format, because of the uneven number of matches, and now the FIFA Club World Cup would look like the Men's World Cup between 1998 and 2022, and the current Women's World Cup. The FIFA Club World Cup for women is still a project for right now. Youth and development is very important. The FIFA Under 20 Women's World Cup is becoming a tournament of 24 teams, like the namesake for men. And also the Under 17 events are very important. If I want to jump to the UEFA, that is mainly the main continental body that really competes with FIFA at several levels by comparing the UEFA Euro with the FIFA World Cup, even though things have changed toward the 21st century, and the fact that the Euro is trying also to expand to 32 teams, but this is very unlikely. Congratulations, by the way, for the United Kingdoms and the Republic of Ireland for being the hosts for 2028. Right now we're speaking with the steering committee about the allowance of the 5 berths to be automatically qualified, because the rules of UEFA let you just have 2 host countries being at the event, but technically it's 5, with the 4 members of the Union Jack, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, plus the Republic of Ireland, that are involved de facto as hosts. In 2020, no hosts qualified because there were 11 hosts at the same time, even if the Final Four took place in England, but it was a celebration of the 60, between brackets in italics, 61 years of the history of the UEFA Euro. But the event that pops as a competition to the FIFA World Cup from the UEFA perspective remains the Champions League, and I will get back to that in a second after talking about national team soccer from the perspective of UEFA. To mention that the Nations League is also an important matter right now that gets played every 2 seasons, and we will not probably see a global Nations League at the world level, but we will see and the Nations League played like we see in the UEFA and CONCACAF zones as a secondary tournament, but it's very important. It gets added to the international friendly calendars. The UEFA Women's Euro is also a development tournament. Like I said, in Europe we will see the same pace of women's soccer as we see at the FIFA played in the UEFA, because the women's soccer body in Europe will have also already have its Nations League started this season as another event after the Euro. Youth events goes along as well, from the classic under 21, 20, under 19, under 17 perspectives. To get back to the Euro, also congratulations to Italy and Turkey that will host the 2032 tournament. The question of the expansion to 2032 is to be approved. We will talk about that. Again, the business of Lausanne, the IOC, is not the business of Zurich. The FIFA is not the business of Nyon, the UEFA. But there are 3 main bodies for sports and soccer, that's for sure. The UEFA Champions League, now to get back, I will come back also to say that the idea of the ECA for the European Super League cannot happen from the perspective of the steering committee for several reasons, long story short, full stop. But the UEFA Champions League is trying to emulate what the Super League project was about by making it bigger, and that will be seen starting the 2024-2025 season. Even though I will get back to the critics of the Swiss model, I think the Swiss model is not good for the future, because we've seen it first of all at the FIFA World Cup of 1954 in Switzerland. Teams of the group do not play against all the teams, and it has been emulated in national team football at the level of the CONCACAF, when you see the second round of the CONCACAF qualifiers for the World Cup, with not all the teams playing against each other. It has been done in 2022. It will be done again in the edition of 2026. And also at the level of the Nations League of the CONCACAF, where you have the teams not playing all the games against each other, with the best top two of each group going to play against the other top four of the region at the level of the quarterfinals. Swiss model will have to be reviewed, as it has been approved for right now to be used by UEFA in the most prestigious competition, which is the UEFA Champions League, even the UEFA Europa League, because let's be frank, the Europa League makes more income than the FIFA Club World Cup, the past one of 8 teams. We will see what's going to happen with the new tournament, but if you want to tell me first FIFA Club World Cup versus UEFA Champions League, no, it's two different competitions. Each one has its prestige and each one is needed in the international calendar. FIFA before was saying that club football is not its business, but things has changed with this new perspective of the FIFA Club World Cup. Regarding the UEFA Champions League, we can try this Swiss model, like I said, in 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026. You will see its flaws. So among the things that could be done, maybe starting from the 2026-2027 season, is to have a better format with 48 teams, 8 groups of 6. Each team will be playing 5 games home, 5 games away. That makes it 10 games, and it gives the same prestige to the competition, with the top of each group going to the second round, which could be either the last 32 or the last 36. The last 32 or the last 16. That creates more games per team, and you can have more clubs with this standard format of 8 groups of 6 from the Big Five and also other leagues. Same thing could be done for the UEFA Europa League and also the UEFA Conference League. I know when we get to the Conference League, it's the budget of the clubs that will have harder means to travel, but many federations in the qualifiers, small countries, goes to travel. I know that UEFA put restrictions of the length of the travel for some countries, but many of them have clubs that could also be having this travel, maybe less teams per group for the Conference League, but this future of having maybe 8 groups of 6 will be better for the European competitions. Taking off the relegation, promotion, or repêchage, if you would, system is good, which means if you get eliminated from the Champions League, you don't get to play with the teams of the Europa League. If you get eliminated in Europa League, you don't get to the Conference League. So this is part of the things that could be mentioned. In South America, the soccer remains in vigor through the Copa America, an event technically of 10 teams plus invitees throughout history, and the classical tournaments that are taking place there from the national teams and clubs. There was, of course, convention between UEFA and CONMEBOL, not just for the Intercontinental Cup, but now with the disappearance of the FIFA Confederations Cup, both confederations play together the game of Finalissima for its third edition. It took place between Argentina and Italy. CONCACAF, like I said, strays a little bit like Europe from the perspective of North America by keeping the Gold Cup, the Women's Gold Cup as well. or the Women's Championship, and there is also the Women's Gold Cup that will have invitees from the Cannonball as a secondary tournament. But secondary tournament for men in this context of action is as well the Nations League that I have been invoking earlier. From the perspective of regional soccer in CONCACAF, there is always a vast presence of the NAFU with the Campeones Cups and the Leagues Cup, the UNCAF and the CFU as well. These are respectively Central American Caribbean that have their the regional tournaments qualifying to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is good because it reinvigorates also the regional football within the whole region, the whole zone. The CAF, now we're moving through development also with the 24 team tournament that started in 2019 in Egypt. Next it will be in Cote d'Ivoire, and after that Morocco, and after that 3 countries will host it: Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. Developing the organization capacity of several countries is very important, as we saw with Gabon and Equatorial Guinea throughout the 2010s that hosted 2 editions each. Other examples with the expansion of the women's AFCON, next edition in Morocco, and comes the secondary men's event, which is the African Nations Championship, which really consists of domestic players of leagues playing for their country. Regarding the club competition, now we have the newly African Football League. I mean, in this context also we can have for the 24 teams a tournament that will see maybe 4 groups of 6. That way each team plays 10 games, 5 home, 5 away, makes it bigger. But the tournament that qualifies to the FIFA Club World Cup remains the CAF Champions League. So seeing the unlike Europe, the Africa Football League that is also backed up by FIFA, and the CAF Champions League has 2 different tournaments. One is to create a prestige of club football in Africa and create more revenue. The second one too creates revenue with its prestige and the teams that are on it, but it's directly qualifying to the FIFA Club World Cup and historically have a bigger history than the Africa Football League. So those are among the things. FIFA is also involved in the regional football that includes CAF and AFC through the Arab region with the FIFA Arab Cup. So I want to get back also to Asia to see that the development is coming with the Asian Cup, which is basically hosted in Qatar in 2023 and in Saudi Arabia in 2027, within the perspective of having the country hosting the World Cup in 2024.